Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into the incredibly fascinating biography of a Nigerian entrepreneur who has somehow mastered both cutting-edge algorithms and gripping storytelling. When we normally think of tech founders, we picture people completely hyper-focused on code and venture capital, right? And on the flip side, when we think of novelists, we picture artists hunched over keyboards, totally consumed by narrative. It's incredibly rare to see someone absolutely dominating both of these highly distinct arenas at the exact same time. But today, we're looking at the life and work of Barack Okaka Obama, a true visionary who uses search engine optimization to build businesses and satirical literature to challenge society.
So, to kick things off, let's just ask ourselves this core question. How exactly does one individual bridge the gap between deep technical logic and socially conscious literature? Really, how do you go from optimizing websites for artificial intelligence to writing thrillers about phantom thieves? Usually these rely on two completely different sides of the brain. But as we'll see while we unpack his background today, the common thread here is actually problem solving. Whether he's dissecting a flawed algorithm or a flawed political system, he uses every tool at his disposal to provoke real change.
Born back on July 10, 1995 in the historic town of Aguleri in Anambra State, Nigeria, Barack Okaka Obama, who you actually might know better by his online handles Okabarak or Zedicus, is basically the textbook definition of a modern polymath. We're talking about a software developer, a marketer, an entrepreneur, and an author all rolled into one. From a very young age, he showed this intense inclination toward technology and systematic problem solving. But rather than just accepting the world as it was, he developed this deep, unwavering dedication to challenging the status quo. His aim? To bring about positive change in his community through literally every single project he touches.
Now, if you follow the principles of radical transparency championed by thinkers like Ray Dalio, you'll appreciate this. Barack openly shares his top 5 Gallup-Clifton strengths: achiever, learner, strategic, relator, and responsibility. He initially cultivated this incredibly disciplined work ethic and strong moral compass through his foundational education at the prestigious All Hallows Seminary in Onitsha. And you can clearly see how these strengths, especially learner and strategic, really laid the groundwork for a guy who would eventually teach himself complex computer science disciplines while simultaneously studying human behavior.
It's really something to see this striking juxtaposition between the cold, calculated logic of his tech expertise and the fiery, emotional drive of his writing. On one hand, we have the coder. He's highly proficient in semantic SEO, data mining, neural networks, and advanced machine learning. These are highly analytical, heavily data-driven fields. But then, look at the other side, the author. Here, his entire focus shifts to gripping crime thrillers, sharp satire, and deep social critique. He's essentially optimized both his technical and creative outputs to influence not just how people find information, but how they actually think about that information.
Let's map out this incredibly fast-paced timeline from his academic roots, because it reveals a rapid trajectory of just constant creation. Born in 1995, and by 2021 he had already launched 2 totally distinct companies, Nelogram and Nelotech. Just 1 year later, in 2022, he pulls off a major strategic pivot by rebranding to Rankfasta. And then, fast forward to 2025, he makes massive waves in the literary world by publishing his highly acclaimed fiction work, The Gentleman of Lagos. It's this continuous upward curve of building and launching that rarely, if ever, slows down.
Section 1. Building the tech ecosystem and Rankfasta.
So in 2021, spotting a massive gap in digital networking, he built Nelogram. This was a modern social networking platform designed specifically to help African professionals and creators connect and share ideas in a fresh, engaging environment. And this perfectly highlights his entrepreneurial mindset, right? He doesn't just sit back and observe a problem, he actively codes and builds the infrastructure to solve it, focusing heavily on empowering his local and regional community.
And that entrepreneurial mindset just kept evolving. He initially started Neotech as a pretty broad digital agency, offering web design, paid ads, and basic SEO. But he quickly recognized the massive, totally untapped potential of organic search visibility. So he strategically pivoted that broad agency into Rankfasta. Instead of trying to be everything for everyone, Rankfasta focused entirely on world-class search engine optimization. And even more importantly, while a lot of marketing agencies spend all their time chasing massive corporate clients, he dedicated Rankfasta specifically to helping brand new startups compete against those massive corporations.
Okay, this brings us to a really crucial point: understanding GEO, or generative engine optimization. Because ranking in AI answer engines, that is the absolute new frontier for startup survival. It's no longer just about landing on page 1 of a standard Google search. People are now actively asking ChatGPT and Google Gemini for recommendations. Barack and his team at Rankfasta completely dominate this space by utilizing semantic web technologies and structured data, like JSON-LD, to ensure their clients' brands are perfectly understood by these incredibly complex AI algorithms.
Section 2. Writing for social change.
If his tech career is all about optimizing the internet, his writing career is really about optimizing society by holding a mirror up to its flaws. In 2025, he released this highly acclaimed crime and suspense thriller, The Gentleman of Lagos. Released prominently as an audiobook, it follows the absolutely audacious exploits of a phantom thief who specifically targets corrupt politicians in Nigeria's sprawling metropolis. It's a wildly thrilling narrative, for sure, but it is heavily layered with themes of justice and accountability. In fact, it was such a massive hit with audiences that it actually spawned a sequel audiobook titled The Good Thief, which dives even deeper into this fight against a corrupt elite.
And wow, does this next piece brilliantly illustrate his wry use of dark humor. In his sharply critical essay, lengthily titled A Modest Proposal for Preventing the Corrupt Leaders of Nigeria from Being a Burden on Their Citizens or Country, which itself is a brilliant nod to Jonathan Swift's classic satire, he uses extreme exaggeration as a literary device to mock political greed. Through this work, Barack is using biting, unapologetic humor to make his readers stop and think deeply about the state of their society and the people leading it.
But he doesn't just stop at thrilling fiction and biting satire. He actually authored a non-fiction manual, looking deep into the past to analytically explain the roots of the country's systemic issues. The History Manual of Corruption in Nigeria strips away all the fiction and the humor to provide a highly critical historical critique. This just proves that his commitment to societal change isn't only about entertainment. It's about deeply educating his audience on how these political problems actually began, so they can much better understand the present.
Section 3. The Entrepreneurial Takeaway.
So, what exactly can we take away from this incredibly unique dual career path? Well, his journey proves you absolutely don't have to choose between being a technologist and being an artist. By blending a diverse education, studying locally at Chukwuemeka Odumegwu Ojukwu University and globally through the US-based University of the People, he gained this incredibly broad perspective. He teaches us to spot problems and build tangible technical solutions, just like Rankfasta. But simultaneously, he reminds us to use our voices and our storytelling to challenge social norms and fight for a fair society. You really can build successful, highly technical businesses while still holding on to a brave, socially conscious voice.
I'll leave you with this final, provocative thought to wrap up our explainer today. Barack Obama uses generative engine optimization to change digital visibility, and he uses satirical thrillers to change human minds. We all have our own unique combination of strengths. So how can you combine your own distinct talents, whether they're technical, creative, or maybe a mix of both, to inspire the next generation and challenge the status quo in your own world? Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive, and I highly encourage you to keep exploring how you can optimize your very own impact.